time. Greetings, everybody. I'm excited to launch the very first episode of the Endurance Life 360 podcast. I'm your host, Coach Jay Ridgeway. And today, for the very first podcast, I'm excited and humbled. And quite frankly, you probably will be a little emotional throughout this episode of bringing on who was naturally going to be the very first person when I thought about this years ago. She's a fellow coach of mine, a fellow accomplished athlete, and also is flesh and blood. My daughter, Emily Ridgeway, or as some folks, a lot of our athletes know her as Coach M. So welcome on board, Emily. Excited to have you here. And let's kind of
Excited to be here.
awesome to have here. I know we've been talking about this a long time. You've been listening to your old man bitch and complain about wanting to do this a long time. So we're finally doing it. So, there'll be quite a few people in the audience that know of us, but then there'll be a few that may be jumping on in for the first time that don't know. But there's a little bit of a unique history here. This is a father-daughter love story in many respects, right? For those that don't know, Emily's mother and I, we had divorced at when Emily was fairly young. She was probably around 4, going on 5. And so the challenge was, Emily didn't grow up in California where your dad was primarily, or ended up, I was in Atlanta, Georgia during the Olympic years when your mother and I, realized that our relationship was not going to be able to continue. And she relocated back up into her home state of Illinois, and you were out of the Chicago suburbs. And then I ended up figuring out, I don't want to stay down in the Atlanta area, let alone be transferred to Florida. And I ended up parlaying my way back to California, which was strategic to make sure that when you did visit your father, you had access to my family and just the wonderful nature of having two different sort of experiences between the Midwest, Chicago area, which ended up becoming migrating down to the Missouri area and then to California. But yeah, let's kind of talk a little bit about that history, because we didn't have cell phones per se, smartphones with cameras and videos. We didn't have social media back then. It was a rotary dial phone almost to some degree. We eventually got you a cell phone.
Landlines.
Yeah, landlines. Yeah, modern day kids don't know what the heck a landline is. But where did you grow up, Emily? And what do you remember of your youth? Just knowing that your mom and dad separated when you were a fairly young age.
Yeah, so we moved to Missouri. My mom got remarried to my stepfather, who is originally from Kansas City, and we relocated to be near his family. We relocated to a small town called New Bloomfield, Missouri, and it is about 15 minutes from Jefferson City, the capital of Missouri, and about 20 minutes from Columbia, Missouri, which is actually where I went to the University of Missouri, Mizzou. But yeah, I moved right after my 3rd grade year, so the summer in between 3rd grade and 4th grade, and then I spent 4th grade through 12th grade in that small town. I think we only had like 500 people there, so it's really small.
Yeah.
Big difference from where I grew up in visiting you, of course, Dad, in the Bay Area, and as well as living in the suburbs of Chicago. So it was quite a big adjustment, but I always look forward to coming out and visiting you in the big city. It was definitely my favorite growing up, for sure.
Yeah. So you grew up in this very much the central, dead central part of the state of Missouri. So on the bookends, you had Kansas City, which is a major city. And then of course, St. Louis is the other major city there. So I typically when I did visit you, I was flying into St. Louis. And one time I think I came in through Kansas City, but mostly St. Louis there. But yeah, there was a time as, I made a conscious effort. Like, I want to make sure I know and love my daughter, but most importantly, I want my daughter to know and love her father, despite the geographic distances. 2 time zone differences is significant. But as we started to learn how to communicate with each other, obviously I was in the midst heavily into, the launch of Pac West, which was started in 2002. And so you kind of grew up around that. And when you did come to visit Dad, you had no choice but to be dragged to swim practices and playing in the sand on the long jump, triple jump pits of the track while Dad's out there running around doing laps and with his athletes and stuff like that. biking was a little bit different scenario, but still you grew up on
Yes.
that, not by choice, but by necessity, because, you know, I was a single dad when you were out there. But, you know, eventually you kind of found your footing in high school. Um,
Mhm.
and what was interesting, the choices of sports, and you mentioned you're in a pretty darn small town, which had not a lot of students per se than when I grew up in, you know, in San Jose, where we had thousands, you know, 3,800 students in my high school. You had, I don't know, 83 in your graduating senior class, right? Very small.
51.
50, yeah,
51.
51. Yeah.
Very,
Yeah.
very small. Very, very small. Yes.
What were the
Everybody
sports
knew
that
everybody.
yeah, so what were the sports that you did? Because I was really proud of you. You kind of chose, you know, to do more of a team sport. And you originally, what'd you end up doing there, Emily?
Yeah, so well, you and mom always gave me the option to do whatever I was interested in. So I did dance growing up when I was really young in like elementary. I did a lot of like sports camps when I come out in the summer. I remember soccer was one of my favorite camps that I got to do coming out into the Bay Area because we didn't have soccer at my school.
Yeah.
Again, very small school, so we had very limited options for sports. But I actually got involved with basketball in sixth grade. Really loved it. Really liked my coach and pursued that until junior year of high school. And so that was super fun. Not something that I naturally was really good at, other than the running piece, but it was a great team sport where I could really collaborate with all the girls on the team and really had to work together to achieve a goal, which was great. And then, of course, naturally, gravitated towards track and field in seventh grade. And during that time, I actually thought, Dad, I'm going to be a sprinter. And of course, he laughed at me, knowing that you are a well accomplished endurance
Whoa, whoa,
runner,
whoa.
but
Yeah.
slowly gravitated towards.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't throw your old man under the bus. I did not laugh at you. I said, okay, that sounds great, honey. You know, knowing in the back of my mind, she is my flesh and blood, and that sprinting is not in my blood. That over time you did figure out that you realize, oh, Dad, I'm better at probably doing the longer stuff than doing the 100, the 200, and so on. But anyways, just wanted to make sure the record was was straight there.
Yeah. Set on that. Yeah. No, you're right. I do remember it that way. You were very supportive, and I ended up really enjoying. I did some field events.
Yeah.
I was really good at the triple jump, surprisingly, which sprinters tend to be better at. I got a couple medals doing the triple jump, and then also did the long jump. I even tried I think discus once and did pretty well too,
Yeah.
just for fun. But I was definitely much better at the 2 mile, the mile, the 800. I did some relays like I think we did like a couple like 3,200 relays a few times, which was really, really fun. But yeah, I kind of gravitated towards the track and field. And then I had the opportunity my senior year of high school to actually form a cross country team. And that was something that I really was passionate about. I worked with my coach on the track and field team to see if he could actually coach us. And I worked with our athletic director. And then I basically just kind of went around the school and tried to recruit people from middle school. So we had a junior high for seventh and eighth grade, as well as high school, ninth through 12th grade.
Yeah.
And I actually was voted the team captain, which was really cool. And I got my one of my best friends, who was a junior at the time, to state. So it was great to get somebody to state our inaugural year. And I still think the team is doing really, really well. They've gone to state several times since.
Yeah.
And that was what 2010 to 2011 was the school year. So just really proud of that. It was definitely one of my more accomplished in terms of athletic endeavors. It was definitely one of my more accomplished goals and aspirations, which was great.
Yeah, if I may add to the audience, just to give a little bit more clarity too. So there was a moment in time where I actually came on out, um, on behalf of the school, just knowing your dad's background. I actually put on a running form clinic for the kids with you, which
Mm.
was super fun for me to be able to come on out, not being the everyday parent, your mom being that and doing that, obviously did a tremendous job of raising an awesome young lady. But you guys did not have a track. The school was so small, everybody. They did not have a track. It was in the planning stage
Nope.
to have a track installed. So ironically, you were the legacy that led into eventually them getting an all-weather track, which they do now.
Yes.
That came like several years after you had graduated. But during that time, I'm literally
Yeah.
giving these kids running form lessons and doing a track workout in their parking lot. So I do fondly remember that. But there was a couple times during that time. I think it was 2008 or was it 2008 or 2009? I had done the Boston Marathon and literally jumped on a plane. Probably I'll never do this again, everybody, but I jumped on the plane that afternoon to go Boston to Philadelphia because I couldn't get a direct flight to St. Louis, and then Philadelphia to St. Louis, and got in late at night. Ended up just getting a hotel room versus trying to drive. It's an hour and a half to hour and 45 minutes from St. Louis to Columbia, Missouri, and then the trekking down to New Bloomfield. So I ended up going to a track. You had a track meet the following day and attended that.
Oh
So I did
yeah.
that a couple of times, and it went from sunny weather to suddenly it was like a tornado going on with hail and thunder and lightning, and everybody was hunkered down either on the bus or like that, and then all of a sudden cleared up again. So crazy Midwest weather there, but a lot of fun memories. So that said, we fast forward.
Yeah.
We went through a whole exercise like, where are you going to go to college? You had you out here. Am I going to try to get you to UC Davis, where there's a big agriculture community? But you
Mm.
ended up making the smart decision and the wise decision to stay in state, take advantage of that, and you went to a major university. Which university did you go to?
So like I mentioned earlier, I went to the University of Missouri, which is in Columbia, which is called Mizzou, and it is the biggest university in Missouri. And I would say it's one of the bigger universities in the Midwest, because we actually, while I was in school, we transitioned into the SEC, which is a really big, really conference for major universities. Um, and yeah, I loved it. I had the opportunity to go to like a junior drawn to the school, and I went there with my best friend, who we had known each other since I had moved to New Bloomfield, fourth grade. So it was a great opportunity for us to be able to just be immersed into this new bubble, right? Because Mizzou is kind of like its own town inside of Columbia, which is really, really neat. If you're ever able to go visit the campus, it's beautiful, and it's just full of life. I really enjoyed being there. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, amazing campus for those that have never been there. When I flew out there to finally visit you for the first time, I was like, wow, this is just one, a gorgeous campus, and two, just you had the feel of this is a big time major university, which it is. But once you got the chance to see the facilities, the rec center, things like that, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, it was super impressive. So I'm super proud of you to making that decision. Was the right decision, and of course, proudly as a father, for those that know, not only did Emily achieve through a tremendous amount of hard work and discipline her undergraduate degree, but also a master's degree as well too. So congratulations there, and super proud of you, just so you know. But the fun part here, and for the audience here, when you got on campus, you knew the background of what your dad was doing, and both as a coach, but also as a competitive age group athlete. Um, you stumbled across the rec program. What did you end up finding and doing at that point?
Yeah, so just a tiny bit of background. Between my junior and senior year, I actually visited my dad for the summer and stayed with him. I hadn't done that for a long, long time, just because I always had sports in the summer, but I just felt like I wanted to go be with him and spend some time with him before I went off to college and I finished my senior year of high school. And during that time, I got to kind of be immersed in my dad's coaching again, but as an older kid this time. And so I got to learn how to really run, truly run. I think that's part of the reason why I wanted to get a cross country team going that senior year. But I learned how to properly run with Newton running shoes at that summer, which was really great. And got to do a couple of races out there as well for running races, and kind of channeled the camaraderie and community that I got from being a part of Pac West during that time and brought it with me to Mizzou. And I went to what was called, it was just kind of like an open house that they had at our really prestigious rec center at Mizzou, and that's where they have all of the they had like really nice Olympic pool. They had a bunch of different basketball courts. They had an inside track. They had endless weight rooms. I mean, they just had everything. They even had a lazy river. I mean, it was one of the best rec centers I had ever seen in person at a university. And so I got super inspired. I was like, I want to be a part of some sort of team. I came from basketball, track and field, cross country. They've got to have something available from an intramural standpoint. And I was excited to find that there was a triathlon team. It was really small, but I was able to talk to a few of the members, one of them being the president. And she was actually one of the founders of the team at the time. And so the team was pretty small and very new to the club sports, but quickly decided that I wanted to be a part of it. And at the time, I was actually training for my first half marathon. And my dad, of course, was coaching me, hence Coach Dad. And he actually gave me prescripted cross training to open water swim as a part of my cross training, as well as bike if I had the time and energy to do that as well, just to give my legs a little bit of a break in between all of my hard running sessions. And so I was like, I could do a triathlon. I know I can do it. My dad's done a zillion of these. I've seen him do it. It's in my blood. Why not join this team? And so I joined the team. I worked really hard to improve my swimming and improve my cycling. And I finally got to be able to do my first triathlon March of 2012 and qualified for collegiate nationals, and got a little bit more involved in the process of being a part of an officer of the team, and quickly took over of the presidency as the other president was transitioning out because she was finishing up her graduate program. So yeah, it was super exciting. I really enjoyed that opportunity, and I had no idea that club sports was even a thing in university, which was great.
Yeah. Just to I kind of add a little more color to that. When she came on board, she kind of quickly realized, wow, Dad, I kind of know, other than the president, who was fairly experienced triathlete, and I'm blanking on her name, pretty much everybody else, you just by osmosis of who you were associated with in terms of bloodline, you knew more than most of the kids that were on the team. And so you ended up kind of having a natural leadership position. And then it ended up working out great where, the president was transitioning out because she was graduating. And so you ended up being, the president for 2+ years, because I know, we'll talk about this probably just briefly, that you transitioned to make the move to California going into or during your senior year for other family reasons. But, and with that, it just got me super excited because, I could relate to you. We started forming an even stronger bond. And with that, I played the head coach role, albeit I was in California. You guys were 2 time zones away, but as so the head coaching role helped you, develop a sponsorship proposal program that I had used for PacWest successfully with some very big name sponsors. But I will tell you all, my daughter, not, you acorn don't fall from the tree. She took that proposal and customize that. And she went out there and signed some unbelievable sponsorships. One, because she's a, attractive young co-ed, college female student who is the president of the tri team. And so she was just knocking home run after home run after home run. So that was super fun. And then the other big thing that was really fun for me is that, because I had done this with my teams for years, we put together a winter training program or training camp in preparation, because collegiate nationals with USA Triathlon were always in April. And so the disadvantage of being in the Midwest is it's cold during the winter. It's not California based teams where you can train year round. But the beautiful thing, and not to underestimate what she was saying about the rec center there, they didn't have one Olympic pool in the rec center, not the varsity competitive pool. They had 2 Olympic sized pool, plus a full diving platform with deep pool. In addition to that, all in the same building. It was outrageously world class. And so we were able to put together Emily did the hard work. I just had to fly out there and coach everybody. But we had a cool Lions lair, I think is what it was called. It was
Yep.
terraced with spin bikes on it, or those that had bike trainers brought them in. It was terraced up, and you could turn out the lights. It was all black lit with cool neon letterings and stuff like that, with a kick-ass audio system that I was able to put in some music, and had Emily right next to me down on the base level. And we were coaching all of their, your 20 plus 30 athletes that time. And then of course in the pool, and then the indoor running track. It was just phenomenal. We did that for a couple of years, I think, to great success. And I know the kids got a lot out of it. And then eventually we went into April, and I flew out for the couple of years that I was head coaching. The first year I think was in Tempe, Arizona, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You did Tempe in 2015, I think.
Okay.
Super fun. We had a great team that year. And then we
Yeah.
did,
And then it was
we did
Clemson.
Clemson in
Yeah.
2016, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clemson 2016.
That was also really good too. Really, really good.
Yeah, well, that's and then in addition to that, but prior to that, all that was happening though when you first got involved in the sport. What was interesting, you sure it was in 2014 into 15? The reason being is that, let's talk about this, and I'll start showing some
Oh, it
photos.
might have been 14. You're right. Yeah, it might
Yeah,
have been 14.
yeah, because
14 and 16.
that
Yeah.
was early on in 14, so that was a February camp. April was the Tempe thing, and then you and I have been talking about this for years. Like, is triathlon going to become an NCAA sport? And I was probably
We were
pretty rough.
hesitant. I was like,
I was like,
it's
I don't think
happening,
so.
Dad.
It's going to be a long
It's
time before
happening.
this. Yeah, a long time. And you really that was a kind of a burr up your, about, you really felt like this can be, and you were all in there. And so
I
what
was
ended up
very
happening?
passionate.
What ended up happening there? Because something happened in November of 2014.
Yeah. So, early January 2014, um, we actually got an announcement from USA Triathlon that women's triathlon was going to be an emerging NCAA sport, which I had previously communicated with you many, many times between 2012 to end of 2013, basically.
Yeah.
And I kept in touch with a lot of people, especially like the women's committee and also USA Triathlon. And I basically just kind of like kept in touch with a lot of people who were pushing this out and wanted to be a part of it. I just felt like it was something I could do for generations to come. It was something that I felt super passionate about because not a lot of people like myself had some sort of scholarship for some of these bigger universities or even some of the smaller universities, even though we were pretty talented. I just unfortunately was a little bit more of an injured runner, as well as a little bit of a late bloomer. And so I never got a track and field or cross country scholarship. But it could be a way for some of those swimmers or runners to be able to transition into some sort of athletic / academic scholarship to fund them for further education after they graduated high school. And I felt like I wanted to help with that and create more of a pipeline for people to not only do triathlon later in life, because it was a primarily male dominant sport for the most part. Like women was really, really small percentage at the time, as well as having a pipeline into becoming a professional and going into, say, the Olympics, because triathlon was a Olympic sport at the time. But you really had to kind of find your way into the sport and know the right people to get the coaching and get the mentorship to kind of transition into that. So it's a very, very small amount of people that could actually like have access to it. So I had the opportunity of being invited to the first inaugural women's varsity championship, November, I think it was 2nd of 2014. I told you I was very excited. I said, I'm going to go. I hope you can make it. It's in Clearmont, Florida. I know it's on the other side of the country, but I need to make this happen because it's a part of the history of our sport, and it's going to only help us to expand the sport into many, many years down the road. And so we made a big trek down to Florida. I think you flew in a few days before the competition. We drove down, We had my best friend come with us too, which was great. So
Yep.
they kind of traded off driving while I could rest in the car, driving
Yep.
from Columbia, Missouri to Claremont, Florida. And I had no business doing this race. It was a sprint. So it was very, very short, very
Draft legal
quick.
sprint. Draft legal
And
sprint.
it was a draft legal, so you could not have aero bars like you typically would have TT bars for something like an Ironman distance. So I really had to kind of quickly learn how to do some cycling in a group and also like swimming in a group. And I wasn't as strong of a swimmer, but I was definitely a stronger biker. So I kind of focused on that area as well as running. And unfortunately, I did get sick during the time, terrible allergies in Florida, but I toughed it out and got to finish. And it was so great. I think there was only like 21
I'm going to
um,
share. I'm going to
female
share.
athletes.
Yeah, I'm going to share it with
Yeah.
everybody now, just so we
It
can
was a
see.
very small group that got invited. But it was
Yeah.
a very intimate group. Really, really
Yeah.
great.
Can you see the screen just to make sure?
Yep. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can see
So
it.
there's Emily with the mouse pad with the University of Missouri on there. She's the only one that represented from school, but you end up
Yeah.
making still to this day some pretty lifelong friends here. Obviously the girls from UCLA or the Bruins right
Yeah,
here.
Kelly,
Yeah. Yeah.
Bree, Savannah.
Yeah. Savannah from
Yep, a lot of
UC.
these.
But this was the
Yep.
very first year, for those that don't know, you fast forward to today. This 2014, these group of women were the pioneers, and Emily ended up doing the following year as well too. And there were more
Mhm.
women because it was supposed to be capped at the top 75. Clearly, there's not 75 women here. This is the very first year. It was so new. But part of the mandate from USA Triathlon was it's an emerging sport, so they give a 10-year mandate to develop and nurture and hopefully grow and expand. And to this day, as of 2023, it is an official women's only, an official NCAA program. So big universities, the very first to fall was 2 years later, in terms of Division I was Arizona State University. They embraced that today, and they've gone on to win, I think, 5 straight NCAA
Yeah.
women's championships because they're well established and well financed. But another, they're finally their in-state rival, University of Arizona, the Wildcats. They finally made the announcement this past end of last year to have that be an
Mhm.
official NCAA women's program into their vast, large portfolio of programs there. So the tipping point, they have 40 universities now, from Division
Mhm.
I to Division III. We have relationships with one of my mentor coaches, mentor athletes that became a coach is now NCAA Division II program, David Winton. Um, and we can talk a little bit about that if you want to, but this is a milestone here. Just kind of follow through. This is pre-race, seeing some familiar faces. Emily, obviously, with the connection with her dad through California, so there's their old man hanging there in the shorty shorts and all that stuff. But I made the trip out. It was super rewarding. This was the pre race the day before,
Yeah.
race sort of debrief with all the athletes of how the race was going to be started, how the rules were, that were going to be engaged because it was draft legal. So you can draft, obviously you can do that in the swim for Olympic and Ironman distance. But in the particular, the thing that was probably an advantage, but also disadvantage for Emily was a draft legal bike. And so if you were not a strong swimmer, for those that don't know draft legal racing, that is a huge competitive advantage. If you can get out of the water early and then get some fellow competitors to work with you on the bike, you can rotate by sharing the drafting responsibilities and pull away from the pack. And so Emily was at a disadvantage, but I will tell you that she worked her butt off and survived through the bike, pretty much riding that completely by herself with no additional aid support to fend off some of her fellow Kelly and the really fast swimmers. She was able to fend them off, and so she was able to transition to the run. And then this is when they did the formal introductions of each athlete, and the university representative. And then this cool picture is showing Emily in her Mizzou kick-ass, really cool uniform, Mizzou Tigers, coming into the finish there and surviving it. And so super proud of her. for not only competing in it, but also getting to that finish line. So any comments on that? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean you hit most of it. I hit, like I said before, I had no business doing a sprint. I would say that the 70.3 or the 140.6 is definitely more of my specialty in
Yeah.
terms of distances. I'm just like my dad. I am an endurance athlete. So sprinting
Yeah.
it's challenging for me. But I stuck with it. Not coming from a swimming background, it's really tough to keep up with those swimmers who have been doing it since they were 3 or 4. I knew that kind of going in, and I knew what the rules were, and I tried to take the rules to my advantage. Unfortunately, again, kind of sick with allergies and sinus problems, just because, it's Florida, right?
Yeah.
Not used to that climate. But I kind of sucked it up and said, like, hey, I'm just gonna do whatever I can and be a little scrappy. So I just tried to like stay with the pack in sight as best I could.
Yeah.
I think I was one of the later swimmers that got out. I'm really good at transition, so I just transitioned as quickly as I could.
Yeah.
And then on the bike, I was mostly by myself. There were a few women that did get dropped off by the pack, but they were too slow for me, so I knew I had to leave them. They just weren't keeping my pace. One girl tried to hang on with me, and I encouraged her to do it, but she just couldn't hang my pace.
Yeah.
And I think that was like a 3 lap. Was it 3 laps or two? Do you
It was at
remember
least 3 laps. It
the
was
bike?
quite a few laps. Yeah. And the way they ran.
Yeah, I think it was like a 3 lap bike and a 2 lap run or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hung on, and towards the end of the bike, I knew it was an outback kind of loop, and I knew that the front pack was going to catch me, and if I get lapped out from them, if they pass me, I'm disqualified. So I basically like went ham on the last like
Yeah.
half a loop to go,
Yeah.
and just kind of went all out by myself. It was super windy that day, and held on barely by seconds, and had a great transition in the T2, and then just tried to like cruise it in because I knew like no matter how fast or slow, I'm gonna be able to finish. It was great as the last person to cross the finish line. There were a couple girls who did get disqualified by getting lapped out on the bike. But I was really proud of myself because that was one of the harder races I had ever done,
Yeah.
not ever having done a draft legal race. So I had to quickly develop some skills, and again just study kind of that handbook that they gave us, to again just try and be a little more scrappy and have a good day out there. And we got lucky. We got super lucky. Of course, having you and my best friend out there to cheer me on made it, I'm sure, all the difference. But the following year, I didn't get quite as lucky. There's a lot more women that were very, very specialized in draft legal. So I did get lapped out on the bike. But it was great to be able to do it the first year and finish.
Yeah.
Really, really something that I hold dear to my heart for sure. Being a
Yeah.
part of something so special. And I think to this day, or that photo that you showed of us, it's still in the Colorado Springs Olympic Training Center, which is really, really neat. So I get to be kind of a part of that history, which is really cool to be able to kind of have that legacy
It's
still
10
to
years
this
ago.
day.
It was 10 years ago.
Yeah,
Well, just being sensitive
seems
to
like just
time.
yesterday.
Yeah, just being sensitive to time. Let's plow on, because that's just one part of, 3 really significant pieces here that I think are important. And this is probably the
Mhm.
biggest one that's coming up right now. So we fast forward to 2014, 2015, the success you had with the NCAA programs, and because of the
Mhm.
situation with my side of the family, my mother was not doing well. She was in a nursing home, and so that was part of the thing I mentioned earlier. You had to make a conscious decision. I want to be closer to my dad. I want to be closer to my dad's family. I'm willing to
Mhm.
finish up my senior year of University of Missouri, which I can do online, and more importantly, try to be able to spend time with your grandmother, because you had lost your grandfather in 2000, my dad in 2013. So you come on out, you make the transition out to California. Unfortunately, lost my mother during that time, and I know there's a little bit of back and forth between that. But the long story short is we fast forward to 2016, and now that you're
Mhm.
based in California, you get to do one of the iconic races that you had always heard about through your dad, because you were not able to attend. It was in early May because you're in school, right? So here we are,
Mhm.
fast forward
Mhm.
to now no longer 35 years history, but you were part of Wildflower. And so for the audience here, you're part of Wildflower history, part of Wildflower, the history of it in the later years and significant. So, but let's talk about what you ended up doing. You competed like your dad has done many times. You decided, I'm going to do the Wildflower Squared. And so what that means to the audience, those that don't know that, it means you're racing on Saturday and on Sunday. And how they set that up is they do the long course, which is the half Ironman distance. You did that well enough to where
Mm-hmm.
you're up on the podium. You finished, on the top 5 is how they did that, just like Ironman does.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went into a situation where you were racing again the next morning to do the Olympic distance. And that's, usually they're 2 big events, but the Olympic distance has more numbers just because they have the collegiate competition,
Mm-hmm.
the elite competition, and the open competition. There's a lot more people that are more comfortable doing the shorter distance, even though it's an extremely hard, challenging course. That was what Wildflower was famous for, but it was a big camping event. The Woodstock of triathlon was what it was known for. So I'm just going to share some photos here, just the impact here. Resharing photos. Here's Emily right here. Olympic, not the half Ironman distance, or what they called long course, was the difference here. Up on the stage, my good friend who Emily knows, that's Julie Moss. He's famous for the triathlon world for crawling across the finish line in the 1982 Kona World Championships. For those that don't know that she's such a Hall of Fame, world class, and super just awesome person in general. But she's out there race announcing and doing the award ceremony. So super special moment. Jumping on over after the medal. There's a super proud dad, Coach Dad, right there, right? But then let's talk about you come back out the next day to race. I'm at the top of Lynch Hill, which is the big, huge, steep hill that you immediately come out of transition when you swim to bike, and then you go down that same hill to go off the bike into the run to transition. That's a pretty iconic hill, and I'm up there coaching. I have tons of other athletes that are racing in addition to there, but I'm like, okay, Emily's coming down the path on her bike, feet are off and out of her race shoes off the pedal, which is what I taught all of my athletes to do, so that you can have a super quick transition. Once you're down at the bottom of the hill, you can just immediately get off your bike and start running barefoot, mind you, and not in your bike shoes, so that you can get into transition and get in and out quickly. So she was taught that way. But what ended up happening to not my awareness, let's just change to the dark mode here. Emily was going down the hill, and I don't know if you want to explain this or if I want to explain that, but she was basically going.
So I remember right before I saw you, I was doing really well. I felt really good. I felt way better actually the second day than I did the first day at the 70.3. And man, that was probably one of the hardest 70.3s I have done to date. It was really, really tough. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it is famous for that.
It was tough because especially the half marathon. The half marathon was tough. And sorry, Dad.
Yeah, it's all right. Cough through. Yeah, she did extremely well. I know that course. A lot of you probably are watching know that course. Just it's freaking hard. But that's why so many people continue to go back there, because it was a love-hate relationship. And so I put a lot of miles and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears going into that race. And so the fact that Emily not only chose to do that one race, which would have been enough, and she was on the podium, she ended up doing something crazy like her dad did and doing the double. So we get in the race. You're doing well. You had a solid swim, confident. You had
really good bike.
Really good bike.
I think I was at the time I was leading not only my age group, but I was leading for the Wildflower Squared. I think it was 40 and under. Like I would have, yeah. I think I was first female that was leading that, which was really great because most people either did the Olympic or they did the 70.3. Yeah. Not a lot of people at my age, had just turned 23 like 6 weeks prior, was was ballsy enough to do the Wildflower squared. So I was actually like feeling really, really good. I gave the 2 thumbs up while I was in the aero bars. I have a pretty great photo. Um, somebody took somewhere. But yeah, it was, my feet were ready to transition out. I was going down the hill. It was a lot busier than the day before because it was a shorter course. And I think, didn't they also have the sprint that day too? Do you remember? Did they
Yeah.
do the sprint that day as well?
No, they do that during the long course, but again, you just had
Oh, true,
you had over
true. But
20
it was crowded for the Olympic.
2,700 athletes, and the way that course was
Yeah.
designed, which is always an issue with that because
Runners down, bikers up,
bikers
bikers
coming
down,
up,
all on the
bikers going
same
down,
road.
runners all on the same road. It's slanted. It's not flat. It's slanted on the curve. So when you're
Yep.
running, you can't be in the curve. You got to be up basically in the lane of the bikers going down.
Yep.
So that, I know some of this is blacked out on you, but you had an issue going
Yeah.
down the hill.
Yeah, I remember. So what I can remember is there was a group of runners from one of the first swim waves that were finishing, and they were all kind of trying to pass each other, and they were in the same lane that the bikers, so myself, were going down to transition into the run. So that's called the T2, from bike to run. And there were a lot of people. I'm a very aggressive descender, meaning I really like to go fast downhill on my bike. And there was a lot of bikers that were going maybe half my speed. I remember afterwards we looked at my Garmin watch at the time, and it was, I think, like over like 50 miles an hour that way I was going. So I'm like trying to pass people without crossing the middle line, the yellow line, right? Because it's, one one way each way for the traffic, because there were still people coming up from the later swim waves. And I didn't want, it's kind of a windy road going down to the transition. And so you kind of have to take some pretty decent, like sharp turns as you're going really quickly downhill. Um, so I approached one cyclist that was probably going half my speed, maybe even less. And he was avoiding a big group of runners, and he went over the yellow line as we were kind of going down to the right as the road was kind of curving. And if you've been on this road, you know that the other side of the road, there's a really steep cliff. So there's no rail guards or anything to protect you. If you accidentally make the wrong turn, or take the turn too wide, you can be off road and going down the cliff. And so I had to make a really quick decision to avoid this person and these group of runners, and brake really hard and turn really hard to the right. And I turned so hard to the right that my right pedal actually hit the ground, and I shot off my bike. And I basically kind of blacked out from there. I do remember waking up a little bit. Somebody was hunched over me saying that, somebody was going to come, medical people were going to come and take me. I remember, screaming for my dad. Where's my dad? Somebody get my dad. And then I know somebody put me into a vehicle, drove me up the hill. I couldn't really piece together what was happening, but they ended up putting me into a helicopter at the top of Lynch Hill somewhere. I remember telling the EMTs, please call my dad. I gave them your number, basically. I don't want to say it to everybody, but I kept saying the number, and unfortunately they tried to dial you, but there's no reception there, and so they couldn't get a hold of you. And then of course they airlifted me to the trauma hospital. Went to the trauma hospital. I remember kind of being in and out with a CT scan, MRI, X-rays. Like, they did everything on me for hours. It felt like days. It was probably just hours.
Yeah.
And don't really remember much after that until I woke up in a hospital and you were sitting right next to my bedside, and I was very tired and sore, and I needed your help getting out of the bed just to go to the bathroom. I had no idea what had happened, and you had to kind of explain to me what happened.
Yeah.
And
So just, yeah.
it was tough.
Yeah, it was emotional, tough. I'll share some pictures here, not to shock everybody, but there's a lot more worse pictures. But as a father, those of you that are parents, this is your worst nightmare. And this was an experience for me. I had a ton of athletes out there, and I think you recall you were saying, Emily, you were telling the EMT, because I'm sitting there at the top of Lynch Hill, and there's an ambulance that literally comes up over the hill in order to get to the fire road to get to the area where
Helicopter.
the air life helicopter was,
Hmm.
which is what she went on to. Had no idea what was going on. It wasn't until quite a few minutes later that one of my athletes, Vicky Parker, came running on up in flip flops. She was down in the race area, which is down the hill. She had to run up the hill in flip flops and up and over the dirt. It's all dirt path. It's all nasty. She could have rolled an ankle easily, but she comes running on up to me and goes, "Coach, that's Emily." And then that was Emily in the ambulance. And I'm like trying to process that. I'm like, what is going on? And then somehow, some way, she and I got back down to the base camp, went into where the headquarters was for the operation. This is, Terry Davis, his daughter, which I'm blanking on her name, who their family, they were family to me, because it's such an integral part of the Pac West team and all that stuff. And they knew immediately once they saw and heard the name Emily Ridgeway, they knew it was my daughter. And so it was a shock for everybody. I got in there, big hugs from them, and just the concern that was on there. But, I had to figure it out. And ironically, I did not have my car. I had your damn car that time. It's a little Ford Escape. And I, thank God, Vicky said, "I'm going with you." And if you can imagine, those of the audience that know me, I'm going 90 miles an hour on 101. They had to get me out of the course, because again, the race is going on. That area shuts down, and they had to go on a fire road to get me on the back way to get me out of here, which is amazing that they even had that. And so I'm going to Salinas, which is a trauma 2 medical center here, and hauling ass. And Vicky's like, "Coach, calm down." So, had she not been in there, and me being responsible for her life, who knows what could have happened there. But we get there. Emily was not readily there when I checked in. She was in they had these trailers that were outside, but adjacent to the hospital, that were the CT scan units. She was in there. And of course, when I heard that, I'm thinking the worst, right? And it was pretty traumatic situation, guys. I'm going to share this photo. So apologies to those that are a little bit freaked out. This is Emily. The trauma of impacting on this, these were not smoothly paved roads. These were very harsh roads, rough roads. And because Emily was not clipped in, I truly believe that she would have had a lot more traumatic injuries. Because if you can imagine, if you're clipped into the bike sticks to you. And when you're tumbling on road or whatever that is, carbon frames break. Aero bar handles have pointy ends. The chains, the teeth of your chain ring, all that stuff would have impacted in her body. She was able to actually separate from her bike. Unfortunately, her body and her skin, her teeth, her bones are the ones that take the impact there. But because I truly believe, because she was able to strategically, from a race mode, be out of her shoes and feet on top of it, that really, don't get me wrong, you can see that she tore her face up. She cracked and crushed her front teeth that she had to have dental work done on. She had major lacerations and road rash, punctures into her knees and things like that. But she walked away amazingly, with not life threatening injuries, which is unbelievable to me, because I did not believe that I did not believe that would have happened, just knowing the situation in the moment. She had phenomenal surgeons. The reconstructive surgeon was world class, former military, came in, started doing cosmetic, the foo-foo kind, and just said, "That's not what I want to do. I want to make an impact." And he happened to be there that day, called in, operated on Emily, and did a phenomenal job. It's emotional. So full body impacts into the body. And then this next picture is her finally coming home. And you can just see the devastation of what the body, the vulnerability of the body. I mean, she had her race kits on, but there's no padding there. She's not wearing a football uniform. It's her skin against the ground. There's some other photos of the puncture and the stitching on her knees, but there was no major catastrophic injuries. With that, fast forward to one of my PacWest, sponsors was Dr. Young, and I made a phone call to him, and he's a world-class dentist and surgeon. He went in and repaired and did some phenomenal work with some other doctors that came on in as well too. And the cool part is, he sponsored the PacWest race team. So, it was an emotional time for us. But something that I'm really proud of Emily. She could have said, Dad, I'm never going to race again. I'm not going to do it again. But, kind of talk about that emotion again, being sensitive to time. We've got another story to tell, but where were you at this moment? Because it was a tough time for both of us.
Yeah, it really, I think for both of us, knocked us down pretty hard, realizing like kind of going back to something that you and Mom kind of gave me a hard time. I actually did do a year of rugby back in college while I was a freshman, and you're like, oh, you shouldn't be in rugby. You're gonna get injured, right? You're gonna get bruised up. You're gonna break your bones, right? And we never ever thought I would get in an accident like this ever. And I do remember being in and out with the morphine while they were doing all the scans. The doctors were like, there's no way this woman shouldn't be paralyzed or have brain trauma right now. Like there's just no way. It's just a miracle, right? That this helmet protected her, because I hit my forehead first and you could see the impact. I don't have the helmet anymore, but you could clearly see that the impact was right on the frontal lobe of the helmet. And if I wasn't wearing my helmet properly, I would have died on impact from my skull.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot to process, right? And I was in a lot of pain. My teeth, the roots of my 3 front teeth were exposed. So I was in a lot of pain. I had to eat through a straw for like a week or so. I mean, I had broken teeth. I couldn't move. I had to have somebody help shower me. I had to have somebody help change my bandages for my wounds. I mean, like 25% of my body was road rash. I had a huge hole in my elbow. I mean, it was a lot to take in. I couldn't walk for a while. I had to kind of like retrain my body how to walk. So I had to like hold on to the walls and just kind of like go slowly and get kind of that neurological, neural pathways going again. And it was tough, but I was very determined to get back to normal functioning, to eating. I kind of had like baby goals in mind, like if I can just sit up today, if I can just, eat a little bit more food, drink a little bit more water, I'll have more energy. If I can just get outside and go for a walk or sit outside in the sun, it'll help boost my mood. And so I was in the middle of a positive coaching psychology master's degree program. And I was in my first semester. So I was able to channel a lot of the things I was learning in school, thankfully. Without that, I think I would have been a little bit more lost. But I think actually we ended up seeing a lot of progress where I was able to within like 2 weeks, maybe.
Yeah.
I think I was back on a bike, which is crazy. I mean, 2 weeks, like that's insane. But I think I was on a bike going back to coach at Bay Club, not physically doing it, but at least, speaking to my spin class and performance cycling classes to coach them through it versus me being on the bike with them.
Yeah.
But I do remember riding my bike to the BART and then riding to the Bay Club on my bike, which is phenomenal because it's very easy to have PTSD after an accident like that, which still sometimes comes up when I'm going downhill really fast, but overall was able to kind of channel that accident into gratitude and channel it into really pushing forward and transitioning into doing a big goal of mine, which was completing my first full Ironman.
Yeah.
And also my first marathon. We did a couple marathons later that year together. Remember
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I do Santa Rosa, CIM, and you came very close to qualifying
Yeah, I
for
think it was like 2 or
Boston.
3 minutes off.
Yeah, yeah. So just incredible recovery, given the, as you guys can see there and just hear and learn about just the traumatic injury for both of us. But obviously, Emily took the brunt of the pain and the suffering. And that said, she bounced right back. I was super impressed. I mean, I still am super impressed today. So this is the sort of the third part of the component, because you and I could talk forever, and I'm not sure the audience could probably handle all this stuff. But the third biggest thing that came out of that was the determination of, you were 23 years old when this happened, and you were very conscious of that, as well as I was too, because I'm supporting you as a father. I was like, Dad, I still want to do an Ironman. I'm still signed up. I'm going to do the Ironman Santa Rosa, which was the new addition, the rebranding of Vineman, but now under the Ironman brand again. And it was in July that year. And so that was on your target list. And so you went from this catastrophic injury to getting back into your coaching. You were a personal trainer at the Bay
Mhm.
Club, and then eventually at Equinox, and doing performance cycling, spin classes, and then obviously you were mentoring underneath me to become a PacWest coach as well too. And so you still were using those as drivers, and obviously the running aspect of that. So I was just super impressed by all that, and just continued to support you and lead you. But I was like, wait a second, you sure you want to do this Ironman thing? But she hunkered down, everybody, and not only did she show up on race morning in July with friends and family there, she kicked ass. Yeah, so much so that she was second in her age group, and ended up making good close friends with the girl who was an experienced, or already experienced, multi Ironman World Championship qualifier, who had already punched her ticket, I believe. And so that slot rolled down to
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
And with that, share the screen again. Desktop 2. This is you with Rob after the successful finish, both of you, of, I think it was also Rob's first Ironman. Now that I think about it, not to
I think so too. Yeah.
yeah, you guys both did amazing that day, and super proud of you. So this is, post race 2017, July 29th there. It says right there on the medal there. And you punched your ticket to Kona. There you are at the top 5
We
finishers
did.
for women's 24 and under. And that was something we were talking about. If you're going to get to Kona, now is the time, as I told you, because when you move into the 25 to 29 age group, let alone the 30 to 34, which you are now in that age group, it is ruthlessly hard. Women are training at a really high level. Their bodies have matured, and so you were able to take advantage of that. And here we are. And then, the final picture, which is the most iconic one, is, if those of you that know the Ironman sport, this young gentleman here who's now retired from being the voice of Ironman, Mike Riley, who's been a friend for a long time to me and many of my PacWest athletes. And obviously, he called her in that day, and called her and up to the stage to accept not only her second place award there, but also shortly thereafter, her punching her ticket to Kona. So unbelievable feats of determination and grit and just toughness that you displayed on that, between the migration and path. And we fast forward from July to October. We are all there. Coach Dad is there with you, and we're cheering you on. That's a different story for a different day, of a tremendous video of you coming in the last mile to go in the pitch black darkness. Kona and the Queen K, they may not have shown you the full Hawaii love. They gave you some of the tough love that day, but you were there and you finished, and that's another story to be told. But tremendous history there. Super proud of you. I don't know if you want to wrap a bow around that as we try to come to a conclusion here, but tremendous rebound from a horrific accident.
Yeah, there's a lot more to be said. There's a lot of other great things that kind of led into this, like competing in the 2016 long course world championship. that I got fourth place. I was just off the podium for
Yeah. Yeah.
in September of 2016, which was kind of my prepper for getting into the Ironman distance as well. But it really did show me like the mindset is huge. It's something that I really like focusing on with a lot of my athletes, the psychological part. It's why I studied it in my master's degree program. But I feel like that even though you might not be the most talented athlete at the end of the day, if you're really focused on, I want to achieve this thing, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get to that goal. Anything can happen, and I really believe that this is the result of that, right? And I know we will talk more in depth about Kona at some point, but it was definitely a dream come true. It was something that you and I had spoke about many times, and just so grateful that I had the opportunity to be able to do it. One, at such a young age, and two, so quickly, because it was my first Ironman at Santa Rosa in 2017. So I was just so lucky that I was able to do really well. Lots of things went well, some things didn't, like a broken wrist 3 weeks before I was going to
Yeah.
race.
Yeah.
But I toughed it up, and I made do with the swim and the bike as best I could with a taped up wrist. So yeah, just so grateful to have had something so dramatic happen, and then be able to kind of turn that into something as of like more of a dream come true, which was again just the cherry on top for me.
Yeah, again, there's many different avenues that you'll now be able to go off into. But one of the things for the audience purpose as we come to a conclusion here, because we're right at the hour mark. But the intention of, and the reason why Emily is, one, because she's my daughter, but two, the reason why this is the first episode, that is when we have certain guests that I'll be working with and bringing on board. Emily will be there as a co-host with me as a guest host when she can fit her old man into the schedule, because she's got an insane schedule. Just real quick, that those that know, Emily just turned 30 the end of March. But just prior to that, I think the week prior to that, she's also engaged to Keith Termanke, who's been one of my athletes since 2009, PacWest athlete. So somebody that I've known for many years. And so congratulations to you and Keith. And that wedding is scheduled for the end of this year in October. And so you had a lot of life stuff going on. We'll spare the audience on that. I did fail to mention in the beginning that, you are a former USA triathlon age group national champion when you were a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
When you competed in the long course, you won your age group. And, I have the documentation and the printout of you being a national age group champion, but, national age group champion, world champion, Ironman qualifier and finisher. Countless number of races that we didn't get to talk about when you were in college, that you were able to work for a shoe company that also produced race events, in particular triathlons events and running events. And so a lot of great history there. But the most important thing I wanted to share with our audience here, many of which hopefully will be friends that are watching, but some that don't, is just, it's a great story. We're talking about, wrapping up 2017, October was Ironman. There's a lot that's happened since then. You've matured as a senior level coach, not only with PacWest, but also separately from that. And so you and I toed the line at 70.3 World Championships in St. George a few years ago. And I know you went back there last year. So there are other goals that you and your old man have to do in the future here, but we'll save that for another day. But any other things you want to conclude or wrap up on, or say?
No, we have more to share, and
Yeah.
we're excited that you guys are along for the ride with us. It'll be
Yeah.
great.
So exactly. So with that, everybody, thank you. Hopefully you got some nuggets of knowledge out of this and found, the story of a father-daughter special bond relationship, and all the trials and tribulations, and the highs and lows, and the tough, painful parts of that goes with it. And that's why the show is called Endurance Life 360. And so we appreciate your time. Looking forward to hopefully continuing our journey together in this. And so we'll bring it to a wrap. We wish everybody a great day. Thanks for joining. Cheers, everybody.